Okay, Mara.
Are we recording? Oh, yep, we're recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation about 10 quick tips to make your life easier. There'll be about 5 or 6 of us presenting a few quick tips that'll hopefully help you make virtual learning a little bit easier. You can go to the next slide. So the first, I forgot. I'm Mara Rogers. I'm a speech language pathologist at Northeast Metro 916. I work primarily at one of our elementary schools, but then I'm also across the district and in member districts doing consultation for students who use augmentative and alternative communication. Our first tip is about organizing virtual lessons for yourself. So this might seem super obvious, but I have found it so helpful in keeping my schedule organized and making sure I get to my lessons on time. So something that I do is when organizing virtual lessons, I use my online calendar to make it a lot easier by adding a reoccurring event. So any lesson that I'm in shows up on my calendar every day that I'm in that lesson. And I set myself a 5-minute reminder so that I get a reminder on my computer screen to log into Google Meet or Zoom or whatever platform you use to attend your lesson. In that event, I always make sure to include a link to my meeting, even if I'm the one who's organizing the meeting. So then when I get that reminder, I can just click right into it and I don't have to search through my Google Classroom, all of my different, Google Meets to try and find where I'm supposed to be. So then when it's time for a class, you just have to click on it and you're good to go. We can go to the next page. So you can also do this for students that I've seen some classroom teachers that I work with do that's worked really nicely for their families. So as you can see with the little table on the left, each of the lessons has a link to it. So all that the student or the parent has to do is click on the link to join the correct Google Meet or Zoom link to get in on their class. So that's my quick tip. Up next is Claudia.
Hi everybody, I'm Claudia Borman. I'm an autism resource specialist at Pancalo Education Center, which serves kids through K through 8 in a setting 4. I'm going to talk about the STAR Online Learning System, otherwise known as SOLS. STAR Online is being offered free for all teachers in the state of Minnesota. There is a link on here where you can register. There's a number of really nice features available to you through the STAR program. And I should back up and say that STAR is really intended for students with autism and DCD. So if you register for STAR Online, you get access to their media center, which has a lot of nice resources. There's some lesson plans. They have a section for primary, for secondary. There's home supports. There's a lot of free visuals. There's a lot of social stories and all kinds of different things already pre-made for you. Underneath their supports, and you do get access to their media center, which is really, really nice. That has some training videos as well. So if you haven't signed up already, I highly recommend doing that. And then another nice feature of STAR that's new, if you haven't used it since last spring, is what they call a reel. So if you go to their reel, you can click on a theme, and again, there's primary and secondary. Strand refers to the level, so STAR comes in 3 different levels, A, B, and C. And that's based on level of functioning. So level A would be the student that needs the most support, and C, the least amount of support. But again, these are all DCD students who are probably going to have a caregiver helping them. You pick the activity set, and then you get a preview, and it creates everything you need on the screen, even scripts to help with some of the instructions. So you could have an EA doing part of that. And it's really pretty easy to navigate. So in a really quick nutshell, that is STAR. They also do have some online webinars that you can watch to get more information out of it. And that's my quick tip. So I will pass it on to the next person.
Hi, I'm Kyra McGlynn, lead school social worker with Northeast Metro 916, here to talk about the Pear Deck extension. So if you haven't already heard about it, Pear Deck is this amazing extension that can be added through your district to Google Slides. And I have found it to be so helpful and meaningful when writing social emotional learning lessons, because if you notice here, this is how to access it. On the left-hand side, you would go to add-ons and you can add it on, like there's a get add-on place. If your district already has it, it'll say Pear Deck add-ons for Google Slides. And this little pear guy will pop up on your screen, and you can hit the template library. And in that template library lives a whole bunch of already made templates for social emotional learning, which is really a high focus right now, given that we are in a global pandemic and all of the current cultural context around racial violence. Please click ahead. So I wanted to show you what, this is one of my favorites as a social worker, but just a really easy way to embed social emotional learning into all of your lessons is just to include questions like this throughout the day. So this is a check-in that, again, is already made in the templates under Pear Deck, and your students and scholars can go in and type a response, they can draw a response, and then as the instructor, you can go back and share them with the class if you want to have more meaningful discussion. Or if you just want to do a quick temperature check, this is a way for you to go back then later and see where your students and scholars are doing and figure out if you need further follow-up. And with that, I pass to Megan. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Megan Helverson. I'm an autism and emotional behavioral disorder specialist in 916. Today I'm going to show you a little bit about Bitmoji classrooms. Whether your students are learning at a distance or at school, a Bitmoji classroom can be a motivating way to work on essential skills. This example depicts a virtual calming space. Once students are taught various tools, giving them a space to explore and practice can support skill acquisition. Remember, it's important to remember to practice these skills in a regulated state. That way, when the tools are needed, our students can utilize and practice with their experience in order to support the regulation. The calming strategies that I targeted are guided imagery, coloring, deep breathing, and labyrinths. Let's take a look at what that could look like.
It takes a second to load, sorry.
So again, as I stated, first students were directly taught the skills, and we did that using video modeling, social stories, role play, and practice. We use this platform to practice skills, and this is a cool way to practice skills across environments. This can be used in the classroom, at home, in the community, so wherever that student has their device. So in order to make our own Bitmoji classroom, we first want to design our Bitmoji character, and that's just a character of yourself. You can do this via the Bitmoji app on your phone. After you've created your Bitmoji, it's time to move to the computer. For best results, add the Bitmoji extension to your Chrome browser. This will allow you to easily insert your Bitmoji or your character into your virtual classroom. Next, head to Google Slides and create your virtual classroom space. You're gonna start with a completely blank slide. You'll want to add images of a wall and a floor to make the space look like a physical room. Do this by clicking background and then selecting choose image. You can then go to your Google image search. You can upload a previously saved image or one that you already have on your computer. After you've added your wall and your floor, it's time to channel your inner creativity. This is mine here. If you look and you Google Classroom, you'll come up with some amazing classroom setup. So this is kind of just a basic first shot, first try. But there's some really cool ones out there. So what you would do is you would, you want to gain some ideas. So look and see what other people are doing and what would work for your student. It's really important to pull in what's motivating to them. When you're searching through images, you want to look for images that don't have a built-in background. So an easy way to do that is to put transparent in your search when you're looking for images. So for example, transparent clock. So that would mean that there's not a background surrounding it. So those images are a little bit easier to work with. When your images are then put into the slide, you can modify them. You can make them larger or smaller. You can flip them, so you can use them to set up your space. If we go to the next slide, we can kind of take a look at what this would look like. So again, we're targeting the skills of taking deep breaths. So if the student clicked on the flowers, this would then pull up the tools that the student is familiar with. So those tools that we need to get them to engage or to have the supports that they need to follow through with a specific task. Again, these are not new tools. Students are familiar with these supports. So then we would walk through. If you look at some of the other pictures, say guided imagery, so looking at the fish tank, you can pull up videos. And these are easily done by just linking different supports to the picture. So it's a quick and easy way. If you go to it's taken a little bit of time to load, so thank you guys for your patience. But you'll have the opportunity to explore. I gave you the link. And so please go ahead and modify as needed. I also wanted to incorporate a data collection piece. So this is something, we really want data to be driving our decision making. And when we have students that are at school or at home or in the community, this can be a quick and easy way to figure out, is this tool working for this student? And we want to use that data to drive our decisions. So again, I created this through Google Forms. It's a quick and easy check-in. So if you were to click on it, the student would indicate what zone they're in. So this again is something that they're familiar with. They've had practice doing it. They would choose what tool they used and then what zone they're in after that activity is completed. So again, it's a quick and easy way to get data and to help to drive our decision making. Now, when you're thinking about this for older students, I was like, what an awesome activity, something that would really be motivating and inspiring to them. Could they create their own classroom? Could they set up their own tools? So really being creative is going to be important, and knowing your students and what will be best to support them. The next tip that I have, again, we're going a little slower dealing with technology, is Google Classroom. So we want to find ways to connect with, train, and support our paraprofessionals. And this can be really challenging. We're busy. We have a lot of meetings going on. Sometimes we're in different spaces, but training is really important. Setting up a training platform in advance allows us to proactively target those skills that we want to reinforce. So what I did was I took a Google Classroom. I created 5 different sections, training videos. So those are videos that, one that I had created. I also put a link and it says 916 staff development training resources. These are all videos that our staff have created within 916 to help support staff and their development when working with students with diverse needs. And so you could feel free to browse those. And if you're like, hey, this would really benefit my students and my staff, those are things that you can use. I then put in putting theory into practice. And that's looking at, we get this information, but how does it really apply? How does it apply to our students and what we're doing day to day? So I just posed a couple of questions, thinking about confidentiality is going to be really important. So I gave that header, make sure that we're not using, any identifying student information. But if you have this skill, how can we use it and who would benefit? I also included a link for resources and materials. So what does that staff member need to be successful? Do they need supporting information? So that's a great spot for that. And then questions. What questions do we have? And we're all going to have questions because we're learning about this together. So a space where staff are able to ask questions freely and get some support from that. I also think it's really important to add a space in I want to learn more. We all want to learn more. We're in education. We're lifelong learners. What is something that's challenging or that your staff member wants to learn more about? So again, this could be something that you do in your classroom or at a program level, but thinking about how can we efficiently target staff development and training is important. So I thought this would be a helpful tip. Thank you so much.
All right. All right, so as soon as this switches to my face, here we go. All right, I'll just leave it like that. All right, so hi, I am Teresa Wallace. I am a teacher on special assignment, and I do work for the consultation team as my primary job. So I have 2 quick tips, and I wanted to share those with you today. Oh, it keeps thinking Megan is talking. That's so exciting. Okay, well, I'm gonna just leave this on the screen up here then. All right, so my first one is our fantastic tech integration trainer for our district, Emily Thomas, built these student tech training lesson plan templates this summer. And you can find all of them on our distance learning resources website. But I took a screenshot. There are all of these topics that are listed here on the left on there. So it can also help with parents as well, but they're broken down into single directions on each page. And I'll open that right now so you guys can see what that looks like. But there are single directions on each page for logging in to the different types of things that our students and families might need support with. So if you go to our distance learning site, this button here is Student Tech Training Templates, and you'd click on that. And then if you scroll down just a little, she gives some directions and comments. And then here are her training templates. So let's do one like using Google Drive. So it's going to force you to make a copy of the document. So you guys don't need to worry about changing the document if you forget to make a copy. This forces you to make a copy. And then it would open the directions. So they're almost written in a social story style with single directions and visuals on each page. So as that loads here, I will show you what that looks like. And we built these. She actually did a phenomenal job building these, but they were built intentionally to have simplified information on each page so that no matter the level of the student, it would be appropriate for them. So, this is where I store my schoolwork, explaining what Google Drive is, because of course it's this amorphous cloud technology that has no physical space, right? It explains what some of the technology and language is, so what the waffle is, so you could use that correct terminology. It shows how to click. And then if you actually go all the way to the bottom, this is kind of the single slide version of those directions. So kind of the task analysis version with a simple visual next to it, so that you could use just that more complex visual if your students could handle that, or if the family would use one single visual, okay? So those are all on the distance learning website, and the link is on the page, okay? My second tip is actually distance learning visuals that my lovely colleague Megan, who just spoke to you, created. And these could be used, especially if you are a teacher or a paraprofessional who are engaging with students via online, and you want to give that student, maybe they have autism or a cognitive impairment, or you know, they just have trouble attending or following kind of those rules for distance learning, for muting themselves or unmuting themselves. And these visuals could be used to cue that student instead of interrupting your instruction, or instead of, you know, that constant verbal redirect. So that link is on the slides, and they are there. And if you think of any other ones, please let us know. You can send us an email for other ideas. There are things on here about volume, turning your volume up or down, yes and no, and that you need help, and how to use. There was one on here, I don't see it right now, that showed you how to use the Google Meet buttons to like raise your hand or press thumbs up, those types of things on there as well. Okay. And last but not least, my colleague Jenna is up next.
Hello, my name is Jenna French, and I'm a behavior analyst on the 916 consultation team. The first tip that I want to share with you today is about building community and relationships through distance learning. I'm sure a lot of you have looked into different activities and things that you can do to build those relationships with your students and try to create a sense of community. I think one of the biggest struggles with that is that since we aren't in person, it does kind of take that personal feel away from those activities. So I wanted to bring a couple different ideas that you may have heard of, you may not have heard of, and then share some other resources to help give you some other ideas of activities you can do with your students in your virtual classrooms. The first example I wanted to talk about was this activity called True for All, True for Some, and True for Me. So what you would do is you would send this prompt to your students before you're going to have the meeting with them, and they would send you 3 statements before your meeting. One that would be true for all, one that might be true for some, and then one that is true for just that particular student. Then while you guys are all together as a group, you'll pick one of the students' 3 statements and not, share who it is, and then read each one at a time, starting with the true for all. And then as the statement is not true for other students, they would turn their camera off. And the end goal here is to have the students' true for me statement, leaving them with the only one with their camera on. And what they can do then is share a little bit about that statement, talking about that true for me, and then sharing a little bit more about themselves. So that's just a fun activity that I've seen done during a virtual meeting. 2 other ones that I wanted to point out are the Lost in Space online training activity and the one word or one image activity. So again, thinking creatively, the prompt for the Lost in Space one is asking the participants to imagine that they're living in a space station, and all of a sudden the space station malfunctions and they have to evacuate. They're only allowed to have 5 items with them. What would they choose? And so then they're able to, select the 5 items and then share why those would be important to them to take with. The other one is the one word or image. So they would choose one word or one picture that really describes them. And so that can also keep things simple, especially if students don't want to be writing about something or choosing a word. An image could be a really powerful way to share a little bit more about themselves. So those are 2 other examples. And what I liked about that resource in particular is that it also has online tools that you can use. So they outline, different ways that you can incorporate this activity using those online tools. If you look at the bottom of this slide, the other ideas I have linked on there with their websites, and 2 out of those also have online tool recommendations, and then they can walk you through how you can use those online tools to facilitate these activities. And my second tip, if we want to move to the next slide, is talking about data collection. So while we're working with students through, distance learning, it can be difficult to figure out, what's the best type of data collection, or how should I be collecting data in the most efficient way that is simple, because you're juggling so many things. So the first thing to do is figure out what your top priorities are. What is the information that you really want to be collecting about, each particular student? Is it engagement in the online activities? Is it tracking behavior? Is it tracking their use of self-regulation strategies? If it's, any of those or just one of those, I did create 2 different examples. One is a Google form example, and if we could just click on that really quick, we'll have that load. So for those of you who use Google and have Google Forms, this is a really simple template that you can make a copy of and use to track different data for your students. So I included the date on there, a drop-down box with the activity, so that you can kind of correlate what their engagement level is based on the activity. And then a rating scale for student engagement. So here I do have 0 to 3, and it's based on the percentage of opportunities that they were engaged in the activity. Another piece of helpful information you can collect is how they engaged, because it might vary based on the activity and also based on the student's comfort level. Some students don't feel comfortable having their camera on. So maybe they're giving verbal answers, and that could be a way to track engagement. So we've got the checkbox there. And then the last 2 sections on here are just whether or not a specific target behavior occurred or a self-regulation skill or strategy was utilized during the activity. So you can collect information on all of those. One of those, I just wanted to share those examples. And then the paper form is the exact same information, just in paper and pen format for those of you who prefer paper and pen. So on this form, you can fill in the time and activity. There's again the student engagement rating scale with the criterion at the bottom. And then same thing for, excuse me, target behavior and self-regulation skills if those were demonstrated during the activity. Right, and then I just wanted to share a couple other ways to collect data. If those, are not quite what you're looking for, you can always collect frequency data. Maybe say you're tracking blurting. It'd be really easy to just have a piece of paper next to you and just telling the number of times that behavior occurs during the activity, so you can see if it's increasing or decreasing or staying the same. Another simple way you can track data is on task completion, or maybe the percentage of task completion. I know one of the concerns with some of the teachers I've been talking to is, the students turning in their work or completing their work. And so you can take a look at how much are they turning in, and of that, how much are they completing? And then that can give you a good idea of where to kind of set those expectations to help increase the amount of tasks they complete, or the portion of tasks that they are completing. And that covers my tips. I think that is the end of the presentation. Teresa, I will pass it back to you.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Jenna, and thank you everyone that presented tips, our quick tips. Thank you for participating in our first CIN activities for this school year. And if you have any other tips that you'd like to share, send us an email, and we will see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.